Inflation is skyrocketing because of Democrats' reckless and wasteful spending. Families are paying more at the gas pump and the grocery store. With the rising prices, back-to-school family spending is expected to reach a record high. This rampant inflation is a result of Democrats' reckless tax and spend policies. This is while crime rates across the country continue to skyrocket. We are less safe in Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi's America. And the American people know that it is because of the Democrats' defund the police rhetoric and policies. Our southern border is in the midst of the worst crisis in 20 years. The reason? President Biden and House Democrats' open border pro-amnesty policies. This is what Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi's America looks like after only 7 months. And this is what Democrats don't want to talk about because they know their policies are failing and they know they are losing. And most importantly, the American people know it.
We know how much Iowans are paying more for things at the grocery store. I can tell you, Iowans are paying more at the gas pump than they did the last time my 8-year-old was in diapers. It's completely unacceptable. And we know that this is a direct result of the Biden administration and Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats in control of Congress and their policies. Parents are bracing for back to school season, back to work, back to health, back to school, back to normal. But I can tell you, my 10-year-old is with me this week here in Washington, D.C. We're talking right now about back to school supplies. Mom, I want to go get my notebooks. I want to go get my crayons. All of that is going to cost more this year. On average, about $59 more per family. So let's be very clear about this. Inflation is a tax. Inflation is a tax on our middle and our working class families. So what does the Biden administration and Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats in Congress want to do? They want to double down on that spending spigot that they've turned on. And they want to spend $3.5 trillion more of your tax dollars on failed policies that will not move this country forward.
I'd like to bring up our conference chair, Elise Stefanik.
Thank you, Steve. Republicans are about to head home for our August district work period across America, and we will be talking about issues that matter to every hardworking family. America is in crisis because of President Biden and Nancy Pelosi's failed leadership and their radical far-left socialist agenda. Inflation is skyrocketing because of Democrats' reckless and wasteful spending. Families are paying more at the gas pump and the grocery store. With the rising prices, back-to-school family spending is expected to reach a record high. This rampant inflation is a result of Democrats' reckless tax and spend policies. This is while crime rates across the country continue to skyrocket. We are less safe in Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi's America. And the American people know that it is because of the Democrats' defund the police rhetoric and policies. Our southern border is in the midst of the worst crisis in 20 years. The reason? President Biden and House Democrats' open border pro-amnesty policies. This is what Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi's America looks like after only 7 months. And this is what Democrats don't want to talk about because they know their policies are failing and they know they are losing. And most importantly, the American people know it. Everyone knows that Nancy Pelosi is nothing more than an authoritarian, lame duck Speaker of the House. Yeah. Sooner than later, that's right. House Republicans will keep fighting against these failed far-left policies until we fire Nancy Pelosi once and for all and save America. And I am honored to represent my colleague, or I'm honored to introduce my colleague, Ashley Hinson from Iowa. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here to give the Biden administration and Nancy Pelosi a dose of Iowa common sense from a mom who drives a minivan and does that grocery shopping We know how much Iowans are paying more for things at the grocery store. I can tell you, Iowans are paying more at the gas pump than they did the last time my 8-year-old was in diapers. It's completely unacceptable. And we know that this is a direct result of the Biden administration and Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats in control of Congress and their policies. Parents are bracing for back to school season, back to work, back to health, back to school, back to normal. But I can tell you, my 10-year-old is with me this week here in Washington, D.C. We're talking right now about back to school supplies. Mom, I want to go get my notebooks. I want to go get my crayons. All of that is going to cost more this year. On average, about $59 more per family. So let's be very clear about this. Inflation is a tax. Inflation is a tax on our middle and our working class families. So what does the Biden administration and Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats in Congress want to do? They want to double down on that spending spigot that they've turned on. And they want to spend $3.5 trillion more of your tax dollars on failed policies that will not move this country forward. First and foremost, it's irresponsible, it's disrespectful for taxpayers, and it's deeply, deeply reckless. So Iowans are sitting around their kitchen tables having these conversations every day. And it's clear to all of us standing here today, back in our districts, our constituents are having those same kitchen table conversations. And the Biden administration and Nancy Pelosi have turned a deaf ear to those conversations. Well, we can tell you we hear you. We are listening, and we will continue to stand up for you here in Congress because it's really about the future of our country. Our conference will keep fighting this tax and spend agenda, and we are working to make it easier for all of you, parents, families, to put food on the table, do your job, get back to work, get back to health, and most importantly, get back to normal. So that's our agenda here, and now it's my opportunity to introduce to you one of my colleagues, Representative Tony Gonzalez.
Good morning, everyone. Nancy Pelosi is a lame duck speaker. Lame duck Nancy wants us, as Republicans, to be distracted. She wants us to talk about this ridiculous mask mandate. She wants to divide us, but we're not going to be divided. We're going to be focused on one thing, securing our southern border and helping the American people. My district is over 40% of our southern border. This is what I'm seeing every single day. Yesterday, my mayors, my judges, my sheriffs, my Border Patrol agents reached out. Things are as bad as they've ever been, and they're only getting worse. And what do we have in El Paso at Fort Bliss? You have Secretary Mayorkas hiding the fact that COVID is spreading in these detention centers. Upward of 20% of migrants have COVID. These children have COVID. I have 6 children. It is terrible to see the conditions that these young children are having to go through. Meanwhile, over 1.1 million illegal immigrants have come through our southern border unvaccinated without masks, and yet you're demanding that folks have a mask mandate? It is absolutely ludicrous. Also on the ground, you're seeing catch and release numbers. You're seeing over 50,000 migrants being released into small communities that can't handle the influx of migrants from Haiti, from Venezuela, from Africa, from Asia, from across the world. They cannot handle it. This does not need to fall on the Border Patrol. I want to be very clear. House Republicans stand firm for law and order. We stand firm with Border Patrol agents. They are doing God's work securing our border. They're doing God's work saving migrant lives. In the Big Bend sector, they just put up rescue beacons. I mean, this is the desert. This is the Chihuahuan desert. Imagine being a migrant traveling 3 or 4 days in the hot desert sun, and you come across a rescue beacon that saves your lives. Border Patrol agents and sheriffs and local law enforcement are saving lives every day. This is the crisis that the Biden administration, coupled with Nancy Pelosi, have created, and it's pure and utter chaos. So Republicans will not be distracted. We will ensure we will constantly fight to secure our southern border. And with that, I want to turn it over to Brad Winstrup. Thank you.
You know, it's very interesting, especially after just listening to Representative Gonzalez. Why healthy and vaccinated Americans have often been subjected to lockdowns and mask mandates, disease and drugs are knowingly and willingly allowed by the Biden administration to freely cross our borders. 20,000 apprehended just last week. I will say I give the medical personnel at the border a shout out for doing the best that they very well can. And if you look at Border Patrol that are becoming social workers and healthcare providers, they're doing the best that they can. But testing is erratic for COVID. You may have some that get tested by Border Patrol, but only if you have symptoms. You may have some that get tested by HHS. You may have some that get tested by ICE. There's no coordination, no set of rules, no guidelines per se. The testing is scattered. And the only place that people coming through have an option of a vaccine is with ICE. And they don't have to take it, of course, but that's the only place it's offered. How are we keeping America healthy? This is not the way. We subject our people to so many things through this, often willingly because we're trying to do what's best for the country and our health. Yet that's being completely ignored at the border. We've been blessed in this country with Operation Warp Speed and a vaccine in record time, not just one, but 3. This is unprecedented. As one of the chairs of the Doctors Caucus, we were so proud of this moment and what was accomplished to have a safe and effective vaccine. And we see that it's effective. But I will tell you that we've known from the beginning, from the initial trials, that some people, even vaccinated, can get COVID. But the data is showing you're less likely to get hospitalized. And it's very unlikely that you will die if you've been vaccinated. But one of the things that we are missing under this administration and the efforts is therapeutics, treatments for those that get COVID. Treatments are what got us through HIV. Treatments will also be a key part of what we can do in America to end this scourge. And it's being ignored. As a Doctors Caucus, we've done public service announcements about the vaccine. Talk to your doctor. Do what's best for you. Do what's best for your family. Do what's best for your community. We know that vaccines work. We've taken the vaccine as members of the Doctors Caucus. But look today what we're getting with politicization of healthcare and science. We're being asked to follow CDC guidelines here. And the CDC guidelines and mask mandates that are being inflicted on the House of Representatives doesn't match the guidelines for DC. Look at you. You're not wearing masks because DC is not requiring it because of the CDC guidelines, yet that somehow is being ignored once you walk into this side of the building. We are getting CDC guidelines that are based on unpublished studies with no peer review from foreign countries that weren't even using our vaccine, so how can that be legitimate? I'm sorry, folks. As a doctor, it is not legitimate. And I hope that when you talk to your doctor, that they are giving you the best advice based on known data, based on peer-reviewed data, as opposed to what is happening here in Washington. And I just want to finish with this message for the American people. As we saw Joe Biden and Kamala Harris berate the vaccine until they got elected, I just want to tell you, if you're relying on Facebook or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris for your medical advice, you're going to the wrong place. So understand what's taking place here, how science is being politicized, and understand that we are going to fight that, and especially proud as members of the Doctors Caucus to try and deliver appropriate advice and appropriate data to the American people and let the decisions be made by you. At this time, I'd like to introduce my friend Nicole Maliatakis from New York. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. We talked about the public health crisis, the economic crisis, the border crisis, the national security crisis it causes. Now we're going to talk about the public safety crisis. As a representative from New York City, I can tell you that these cities run by radical Democrats that have decided it was a good idea to tie the hands of police departments and cut their funding are seeing record high levels of crime in their city, and it's got to stop. Government's first responsibility is to protect its citizenry. Yet in New York City, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Atlanta, Minneapolis, Seattle, Salt Lake City, Portland, Hartford, Norman, Oklahoma, and Austin, Texas, we have seen the radical left take away those resources from our police, and the citizens are suffering. I'm here in Washington to spread that message. That's what's happening in my city of New York cannot continue to happen in cities across America. In New York City, shootings are up by 73% this past month of June compared to last year. And that is on top of a 97% increase from 2019 to 2020. Because of bail reform, Governor Cuomo's bail reform, we have seen 50% of criminals who are arrested for shooting someone being put back on the streets, and 9 out of 10 people who are arrested with firearms, illegal firearms, are released the very next day. And what does Nancy Pelosi want to do? She tried to sneak in the bail reform here in the COVID relief package. And when you gave them the opportunity, and think about that, think about what they're doing. When I put up language that says Congress condemns any attempts to defund, dismantle, or abolish the police, every single Democrat voted against that language. What is wrong with that language? And I assume every single person here would agree with it. Yet Nancy Pelosi is running around saying she wants to arrest people, my staff members who are vaccinated, arrest them if they're not wearing a mask. So where is their priority when it comes to public safety? In my district yesterday, an 88-year-old woman was she had it was a gunpoint robbery in the middle of broad daylight, 3 p.m., an 88-year-old woman where they took her necklace. If she didn't give it to them, they were threatening to shoot her. And that's just the latest example of the ridiculous things that are happening in our cities because of the policies put in place by the Democrats. We stand for law and order. We support our police. And we will continue to push back against those hypocrites who want to abolish the police, defund the police, and then they walk around with their own personal security. Thank you very much.
Great